what prompted you to do the work with parents and families that you do, as a teacher?
Well, I think it's a mindset. At the end of the day, there are no schools without families. And I certainly value them as equal partners in the work. And so I can't do the things that I do unless I, work with families. I also see families as a text, the same way that we read books and we read articles and we read and we watch videos. I like to utilize the knowledge of parents to, for kids to lean on while we're studying the many things that we study. And so I think, they're such a crucial part of a child's life. And my job is just really to continue to amplify that relationship in that work, and then, making school just kind of fit into that.
No, I love that. Absolutely. Like it's like a puzzle piece, where everyone has their right fit, which brings me to my second question. What do you think parents and families need right now, especially and particularly speaking to Black families, with everything that's going on in the country, with the uprisings, the protests and the movements and everything going on?
So families should never, Black families especially, should never, ever, ever, ever kind of overlook the value that you have by just having a conversation about your experiences. Right now, in the midst of the uprisings, in the midst of the riots and the protesting, both digital and out in the streets, you have so much to offer your children by just talking to them, sharing your ideas, disagreeing and agreeing, because we know that our children don't always think the way that we do, right? And so hearing them out, right? And giving them that space to really have a conversation. And so that they're not just sort of absorbing and moving on. And then get out in the streets with them, right? Like, do their activism too. And invite them into your world as well. So I think we just need each other. We need time and space. And I think there's nothing stronger than community at a time like this.
Overall, why is it important for parents to receive an accurate picture of their child's achievement?
Because parents are putting their faith, their everything, their precious gems, and jewels into the system, right? And parents deserve to know how their child is growing as a whole person. And unfortunately, we have, as a system, as an education system, really leaned on this numerical value that, paints the pictures of children, a grade does not define a kid holistically. And I think that that's a systematic thing that we have to solve as educators and school leaders and system leaders, to figure out, how do we really actually do that? Like, how do we give you an accurate report of what your child is doing? And I think a simple way of doing that is just putting the reflection on the child, right? What have you learned? What skills have you learned, and what are your areas of improvement, right? So giving the child the opportunity to reflect, as opposed to seeing seeing schools as the big be all end all, source of knowledge, right? Your child should be able to tell you if they're doing good or bad in school, or anything in between, and be able to back that up with evidence. So I think that's the way to give them the most accurate reporting. But it's so crucial, because, they give them to us for 8 hours a day. The least that we can do is show them through accurate data collection, who their child is becoming in this institution.
Summer loss is something that happens to children that don't have access to proper resources, particularly minority families, Black families, other families of color. How can those families help prevent summer learning loss? I know you touched on that a little bit earlier with, kind of using real life moments to kind of continue to teach. But how do they, how do they prevent that summer learning loss so that when they come back to school in the fall, they aren't behind their other classmates?
When a community comes together, and particularly the Black community comes together and said, this is what we want to happen, it happens. So lean on your neighbors, lean on your cousins, you know what I'm saying, your aunties and your uncles to, to build on the momentum that you already have, right? You've seen up close and personal how your child learns, what your child struggles with. And so you just want to continue to build upon that. How can you gather more materials and books or things in your house that allows them to continue to deepen their understanding and passions as you so talked about earlier. So I think at a time like this, it's just important that families come together. There's an increase in Black families who are turning to the homeschool model because they really see and value each other as educators.
And you teach sixth and seventh grade, which is a pinnacle time for children. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the importance of representation, not just for kids in general, but particularly little Black boys, being a Black male educator yourself.
Yeah, I just want to echo that it is an epidemic. I'm a unicorn in a large forest, and that is not right. Especially when you're talking about being a teacher in the core subjects. It's crucial that students see themselves so that they get a chance to have their perspective heard and valued. The way that I plan lessons around race will more than likely be completely different than a white female teacher who plans lessons or history units surrounding race. And having that conversation with them as a Black male teacher who has experienced a lot of things and who has traveled the world and who has worked in multiple schools, it creates a learning dynamic like no other. And students deserve to have Black teachers who they get to talk about Black history with. That is the affirming piece that is so crucial as students are, growing up and exploring their identities. If they're constantly being surrounded by the dominant culture, that then will play a part in how they see the world. But every time that they have a Black teacher, they have a greater chance of going to college. They have a greater chance of success than if they have teachers who don't look like them. That's just what the research says. That's a fact. It is imperative that Black children have Black teachers.